those who appreciate the work that we're doing here on Standing for Truth, please hit that subscribe button because we are just getting started.
All right, looks like we are live tonight, guys, for a very exciting debate. Tonight we're debating the topic of intelligent design. We've got Otangelo with us, as well as Patient Beard, who at the end of the day really need no introduction. They have had numerous debates, 2 seasoned debaters, which is why I'm so pumped for this debate. So before I get into the format and introduce the debaters, I want to point out we've got some good shows for you in the next couple weeks. Our next show will be on Wednesday. We've got Matt Slick here debating Dr. Ron Garrett on the topic of atheism, Christianity, and morality. So that's going to kick off at 8:30 EST. Mark your calendars. That's going to be a good one. Anyways, let's hand it over to the debaters for a brief introduction. Just kind of break the ice. Tell us a little bit about yourselves, if you want to plug your channels, so on and so forth. So, Otangelo, brother, thank you for being here with us again tonight.
Yes, thank you, everyone. Thank you, Standing for Truth, for having me at your channel. I think I don't need much introduction. I have 2 channels on YouTube. One is Intelligent Design Academy. The second one is The God Talk. I have a virtual library where I collect information about origins. The name is reasonandscience.catsport.com. And I think that's it.
Awesome. Well, thanks again for giving us your time tonight, Otangelo. If anybody hasn't subscribed to Otangelo's channels yet, please go do so. He's putting out some good material. And Patient Beard, thank you for being with us again. I think the last time was we were talking pre-show about a year ago. Time has flown by. We had you here to debate Kent Hovind himself, and that was definitely one to remember. So thanks for being here again.
Yep, that was a lot of fun. My name is Jared. I go by Patient Beard on the YouTube here, and I like to argue. So that's me.
Awesome. Well, that's why we love having you on. You always make for a good debate and discussion. So anyways, we got the introductions out of the way. We got some good people in the chat, guys. Format for the day is we're going to be starting with 13-minute openings. Now, the debaters don't need to take all 13 minutes, but that would be the maximum time frame. We're going to be starting with Otangelo as he is in the affirmative, followed by a discussion period. But then we're going to end it with a Q&A. So, guys, please tag me with your questions. I'll save as many as I can, and we'll have a good Q&A at the end as well. So let's get right into the openings. Otangelo, I see your screen popping up, so let me share that for you. And whenever you're ready, you've got 13 minutes.
Okay, I'm ready. Can I start?
You're all good.
Okay, natural or supernatural? What explains best our existence? One of the most fundamental questions that we can ask is, what is the ultimate ground of reality? The naturalist has only one big gun, sense experience. He sees the natural world. The problem is, man is finite and can't get a view from outside the box. Inferring that because we have observable evidence of the existence of the natural world, therefore all reality is just natural, is a logical fallacy. The evidence points to 2 possible outcomes. Either the natural world is all there is and has ever been, or there is a necessary being, a creator above and beyond space-time and matter, which created all contingent beings for his own purposes. Only one worldview can be true. If the various worldviews have mutually exclusive truth claims, only one can be true. Materialism holds that nothing else exists beyond the natural world. All reality is the result of unguided events. It's a worldview devoid of higher meaning and purpose. The theistic worldview holds that the universe and living things are best explained by an intelligent cause and not undirected processes. Any worldview is limited in that it does not grant absolute truth, but only degrees of probability. In order to come to the best conclusion, I employ Bayesian probability and eliminative induction. Bayesian inference is a method of statistical inference in which Bayes' theorem is used to update the probability of a hypothesis as more evidence or information becomes available. Accepting the best explanation maximizes the robustness of one's position. Eliminative inductions argue for the truth of a proposition by arguing that competitors to that proposition are false. Persistent lack of progress on a scientific problem is exactly what one should expect when a hypothesis has failed, or when the permitted causal explanations are restricted without justification. When the possible explanations form a dichotomy, either A or not A, they form a mutually exclusive class. Eliminating all the competitors means that the proposition is true. As Sherlock Holmes' famous dictum says, when you have removed the impossible, whatever remains, however improbable, must be the truth. In this case, eliminative inductions, in fact, become deductions. So in order to contrast intelligent design to non-design, we must ask, how can we detect intelligent design in nature? If God left fingerprints of past action, how can we recognize those? There are at least 10 different things that, in my understanding, constitute clear hallmark of intelligent design. Things that random unguided events are not capable of producing. This is Mount Rushmore from the Canadian side. I think any one of you can distinguish which part was designed and which one was not designed. 1. The universe had a beginning, therefore a cause. There are major reasons why the universe must have a beginning. The first is scientific evidence. The universe is expanding. That means there had to be a beginning where the expansion began. Another reason is the cosmic microwave background radiation. Of course, there are those that say that the Big Bang Theory does not tell us about what happened before Planck time. As Eddington stated, the law that entropy always increases holds the supreme position among the laws of nature. That means the universe started in a state of high order and is winding down towards disorder, reaching a state where no work can be performed and heat death is the end station. There is no mechanism to break the second law and wind up the universe to start again in a state of high order. That, in my view, puts an end to the speculation that the universe could be eternal. And once that is granted, that the universe had a beginning, it had a cause, and that cause was God. 2. The properties of the physical universe depend on the laws of physics, but the laws themselves do not depend on what happens in the physical universe. The ultimate source of the laws transcend the universe itself. They lie beyond the physical world. The only rational inference is that the physical laws emanate from the mind of God. 3. The universe is finely tuned to host life. The initial conditions of the universe, subatomic particles, the Big Bang, the fundamental forces of the universe, the solar system, the Earth and the Moon are finely tuned to permit life. Over 150 fine-tuned constants are known. Fine-tuning is extremely unlikely due to chance or necessity. Therefore, it is most probably due to a powerful creator which did set up the universe in the most precise, exact fashion to permit life on Earth. 4. The origin of life. The origin of life is widely regarded as one of the most difficult open questions in science. It is now over 70 years since scientific investigations tried to solve the riddle. The scientific proposals cannot be others than to suggest a gradative, slow process of chemical evolution over a long period of time. But Eugene Koonin confesses, the origin of life field is a failure. A succession of exceedingly unlikely steps is essential for the origin of life. These make the final outcome seem almost like a miracle. This has many reasons. For example, a science paper from 2017 confesses, at most, we are lucky to generate short polypeptides or polynucleotides or simple vesicles, a far cry from the complexity of anything living. Here, we can apply eliminative induction. Abiogenesis research has failed, therefore special creation is the better explanation. If you think there is still some hope that future scientific investigations will provide a solution, consider following. One of the smallest free living creatures we know of, Pelagibacter ubique, for example, which is also the most abundant organism on Earth, a tiny bacterium, requires 1.3 million nucleotides, the building blocks of genes. If we suppose that an unguided event ordered the right sequence, there would have to be 10 to the 722 thousandths of power attempts to get the right sequence. There are 10 to the 80 power of atoms in the entire known universe. Maybe you insist that a gradual process during long periods of time could still solve the riddle. But Wilhelm Huck, chemist from the Netherlands, wrote, a working cell is more than the sum of its parts. A functioning cell must be entirely correct at once in all its complexity. And Steve Benner, professor of chemistry, writes, systems given energy and left to themselves devolve to give useless complex mixtures, asphalts. The literature reports to our knowledge exactly 0 confirmed observations where evolution emerged spontaneously from a devolving chemical system. It is impossible for any non-living chemical system to escape evolution to enter into the Darwinian world of the living. Now, let us suppose someone would show you a website with the project of a chemical nanofactory that joins molecules and then larger and larger parts, and in an assembly process makes tiny computers with transistors and processors. And your friend would ask you, does the project to make the nanofactory come A, intelligence, B, random unguided forces, C, physical necessity, or D, you would not know the answer? Of course, you would say, what a silly question. Of course, it was made by an intelligent person. Now, blueprints, machines, and factories are always the product of intelligence. Genomes direct the making of molecular machines and cell factories. All this is therefore the product of design. Living cells store very complex genetic and epigenetic information and over 40 epigenetic languages, translation systems, and signaling networks. These information systems instruct the making and operation of cells and multicellular organisms. This information prescribes functional outcomes due to the right particular specified complex sequence of nucleotides and ultimately the translated sequencing of amino acid building blocks into protein strings. Living cells are full of proteins which are molecular machines, rotors, energy turbines, transistors, computers, engines, 3D printers, and factories. And they are all made upon the same design principles as man-made machines. So we have to ask, where does this information come from? The only known source of semiotic information is intelligence. Prescriptive assembly functional information is not a tangible entity, and as such, it is beyond the reach of and cannot be created by any undirected physical process. This is not an argument about probability. To suggest that the physical process can create codified instructional information, ciphers and codes, syntax, semantics, and pragmatics, is like suggesting that clouds can write happy birthday. It is never going to happen. Each cell hosts millions of interconnected molecular machines and motors like the flagellum, analogous to devices made by man. Molecular machine complexes are a prerequisite for DNA replication. In prokaryotic cells, it involves more than 30 specialized proteins to perform tasks necessary for building and accurately copying the genetic molecule. Each of these proteins is essential and required for the proper replicating process. Not a single one can be missing, otherwise the whole process breaks down and is unable to perform its task correctly. The emergence of machines for specific purposes and assembly lines of machines working in a joint venture are always observed to emerge through the direct intervention and creative force of an intelligent agency, a powerful creator. And well, here is the thing. A cell is a chemical factory in a literal sense, and that explains why science is unable to come up with naturalistic explanations of why life is not an emergent property of matter. The origin of living systems, functioning and based on instructional assembly information, is best explained by creation through an intelligent designer. And with that, my introduction for the debate ends.
Awesome. Thank you so much for that introduction and PowerPoint presentation there, Otangelo. We are now moving to Patient Beard and your opening statement. You've got up to 13 minutes, but of course you don't need the full 13. Patient Beard, you are on mute, so when you're ready to speak, just make sure you unmute yourself.
Oh, there goes the unmute. Couldn't figure that out for a sec. Anyway.
No problem.
So the first thing that kind of got me just from my opening statement, I was just going to touch on a few of the things that he said and what I intend to discuss next in the Q&A. He brought up supernatural versus the natural. I find it interesting that that's the basis for it, because we don't have any basis for the supernatural in reality anywhere. So to even consider it as a solution to any proposed problem seems problematic to me at best. So the next thing he just touched on Bayes' theorem. I'd like to know. I'd like to have an idea on what his numbers look like. I am a math guy myself, so we might dive into that. I don't know. We had some references to Sherlock Holmes there, basically stating that if we deduce all possible, all possibilities, then the only thing left, however unlikely, improbable, is the cause. That's a Sherlock Holmes thing, but it discounts a lot of things when you're talking about things where you can't know what all the possibilities are, and it really wasn't designed to be used in the realm of the supernatural, because with the supernatural you're talking about eliminating all possibilities, known possibilities within the natural, and then stretching out to something that's unfalsifiable, that's literally the imagination of other people in a lot of cases. If you're gonna try and eliminate all earthly possibilities, that's one thing, but when you start to include possibilities that are in the realm of supernatural, well, how do you know there's only one? How would you eliminate the additional ones? How do you know you've settled on the right one? So there's there's a couple of problems trying to use that with things like the supernatural. We had a touch here on the beginning of the universe about how basically it had to have a cause, and I won't argue with that. We had some touching on the second law of thermodynamics, so we'll probably discuss some of that. From what I can tell, most of the introduction discussing the fine-tuning and the origin of life, I will be countering with as the gambler's fallacy. Just to say that the odds aren't in your favor doesn't mean that, it couldn't have happened, basically. And when you have something like winning the lottery, which is a natural explanation to something, and you wanted to compare that to something supernatural, I would lean towards winning the lottery. And yeah, and the only other thing I could think of is Watchmaker. He brought up treating DNA like a code and treating cells like comparing cells against technology, but you don't have any basis to compare that against. One sec. Sorry. You don't have any basis to compare that against. When you're talking about nature, and you're trying to say that nature is design, well, what did you compare that against? Because when you're talking about something like a machine, where that what manufactured things and what man-made things look like, and you can tell and you can compare and contrast those against nature to tell that they are in fact man-made. So you can't just say, well, it looks like a machine, we're going to classify it as a machine, and because it's a machine, it had to come from an intelligence, when it's something from nature, and you're not comparing it to anything. You don't have anything to compare it against when you're talking about that. I think I've rambled on long enough, so perhaps we'll just go into the open discussion.
Okay, perfect. Thank you so much, Patient Beard, for your opening statement. Real quick before we go into the discussion, we've got a lively chat. We're looking forward to this discussion. I'll go over these super stickers before I miss them for later. Doki Doki Bible Club, the boss of super stickers, thank you so much. I appreciate it. And we've also got questions coming in, guys. So as you are doing, make sure you're tagging me where I can save them. And like I said, we'll get to as many as we can. And thanks again, Doki Doki Bible Club. So let's move on to the discussion portion, guys. I guess since Patient Beard just ended with his opening statement, Otangelo, we can let you kick it off. If you got a few points, comments, or a question you'd like to make, go ahead. Oh, Otangelo, you're on mute. I'll unmute you. Okay, you're good to go.
Okay, the first thing that Gerald brought up was no basis for the supernatural. Well, I think that entire creation indicates that God exists. Since the universe had a beginning, it had to have a cause. Since something...
Okay, so this is an open discussion, right? So
yes, maybe we can just set one thing after the other. You brought up one,
yeah,
2,
I
3, 4,
think that's
5,
a good idea.
6, 7, 8, 9, about 10 or 11 different points you brought up as a criticism to my introduction. So maybe you can just select one of those things and we can discuss them.
I'm with you there. My first question for you is if you're going to say that the universe had a cause, what I want to know is how did you determine that cause was an intelligent cause as opposed to a natural cause? Because I mean, we could just say lightning has a cause as well, but that doesn't mean the cause of lightning is all of a sudden Zeus. So how did you determine that intelligence is the cause of our universe?
Okay, we have basically 3 possibilities here, and I can read that to you. In an event causation, one event causes another. In that case, another contingent physical cause would have had to trigger the Big Bang or further back a cosmos or multiverses leading to an infinite regress. If it were impersonal, it would have to be of physical substance, space, time, and matter, or abstract numbers and math. There could be no physical being beyond our universe or a greater cosmos. And then in a state-state causation, one state of affairs causes another state of affairs to exist. It faces the same problem. This causation is like a frozen pond where there would be a tree trunk resting on the top of that pond, and the frozen pond is causing the rest of the tree trunk, but that could not trigger a change from one state into another, but would remain static from eternity. And the state-state causation would also have to be physical. Let me finish just the third point, and then you can ask me, okay? In a state-event causation, the cause is a timeless state, but an effect is an event that occurred at a specific moment in the finite past. The cause of the universe beginning would be a personal agent, an unembodied mind, who freely choose to create a universe. That is state-event causation or agent causation, which has to go from a state of timeless mental being to will an event of a transition from a non-physical to a physical state of being. Therefore, the only explanation of what triggered the universe or cosmos is intelligent causation based on non-physical mental will and power. And since that cause created matter, space, and time, it had to be immaterial and exist in a timeless dimension. The only immaterial things we know of being able to cause something into being are conscient minds who are able to make decisions. Therefore, the cause must be personal. So there must have been a decision to cause the beginning of the universe beginning. We know by experience that the mind can cause action solely based on will. An eternal, necessary first cause is the best explanation of our existence. Only a mind can cause an effect without a pre-existing physical condition.
Oh, okay. So you eliminated the multiverse hypothesis based on an infinite regress?
Well, the multiverse would also require a cause and a beginning. And then you have basically just put your problem of a beginning further back, but it doesn't eliminate the problem.
What's wrong with an infinite regress?
Well, let's suppose you start count from now, and then you stop after 1,000 years. Then you have a finite time that passed. But if you keep walking and 1,000,000 years passes, then you have also a finite amount of time. And you can go on. Whenever you stop and look back, you have not an infinite amount of time. You have always a finite period of time that passed. And now you can apply that to the past.
So how did you determine there was a start?
Because we cannot reach here if there is not a beginning, because whenever you stop counting, there is a finite period of time that has passed. If you want to suppose an infinite,
but how did you determine there's a start at all of it, though?
Well, as I said in my introduction, patient, that our universe provides all evidence, scientific and philosophical reasons, that the beginning of our universe is the best explanation. And then you have to ask what caused that universe into existence.
But you just asserted that it was the best explanation, and I'm disagreeing with your reasons, because you're trying to tell me that there was a beginning somewhere, and I'm trying to ask you how you determined that there was a start to all of this. Because you're speaking like an infinite regress is some kind of a problem for cosmology.
Okay, I can read you for you here. If we are starting to count from now, whenever we stop counting and look back, there is always a finite number that was counted. So you cannot go from counting to an infinite number of events that happened.
But if you're standing at 0, you can go and look in one direction infinitely, and you can look in the other direction infinitely. You can go positive, you can go negative infinite. I want to know. You're trying to describe a vector, and a vector isn't really a true infinite because it has a starting point, as you mentioned. It's only infinite in one direction. But you're only starting and going in one direction. I'm trying to find out what is wrong with infinity in both directions.
Okay, if you start counting from now, then of course you have potentiality into infinity into the future. But if you look back, in order to arrive at that present moment in time where we are now, you also need a point where you start counting. And that point cannot be in the infinite past. It has to be a certain amount of time passed in the past.
But how do you know that? Let me rephrase that. All we have is enough data to go back to the beginning of our universe. So right. I want to know, you basically asserted that there was nothing before our universe, and I want to know how you know that.
Well, what I assert is that there was either nothing physical beyond our universe, but if you state that there was actually an oscillating universe or a multiverse or whatever you want to posit, which is also an entity which changes, then you require time. And when you require time, then you require
which theory of time are you working with?
I work with a theory of time.
A theory of time?
Yes.
Okay. I'm just trying to think, because it just seems to me like you're just saying that this just had to have a start. But
it's not just that I am saying it. What I am saying, Gerald, is that if you look back in the past, there has to be a moment where everything started, because otherwise you cannot arrive to the present moment in time where we are now.
Except that we're here. How could you tell that?
Precisely because we are here, that means that there had to be a starting point. Either it's at the beginning of our universe, but if you want to posit a higher a cosmos, a greater universe or a multiverse or whatever it is, it had to be a starting point. And then you have just pushed back the problem of the beginning further back, but you have not cleared the problem of the cause.
Well, how did you eliminate a natural cause out of when you're talking about causes of our universe?
I just read to you the three possibilities, and
I heard your possibilities. I guess what I'm trying to ask you is I don't know. I think you and I just aren't getting past the math on infinities here. How? Man, I thought I was more prepared than this. I feel embarrassed now. I'm sorry, people.
No problem.
Let's talk about I guess the last point. You brought up entropy. You said entropy can't be rewound, right?
Correct.
Okay. That was but that was not any references to abiogenesis. Maybe I'm mixing my points here.
No, that has nothing to do with abiogenesis. Okay. That is the point which I am making, that if the energy in the universe is consumed in the future, then there is no mechanism to like a watch which you recharge.
Well, multiverse hypothesis, I think if you understood it a little more, it has an explanation for that. Because the multiverse involves a collapse of the Higgs boson, basically in an outward direction at the speed of light, and that collapse is a collapse from dark matter into photons and what are the not atoms, but the smaller ones. I'm so terrible at particle physics. But
Quarks.
yes, the quarks. Thank you. My point is that multiverse hypothesis, it answers the question of where our universe came from, and it does it using a natural explanation, and it does it using something that is compatible with our known laws of physics. And like I said, well, tell me how you think the laws of physics emanate from the mind of God. How about that? Let's shift gears a little bit.
Okay. I can read to you a syllogism here. The laws of physics are like the computer software driving the physical universe, which corresponds to the hardware. All the known fundamental laws of physics are expressed in the terms of differentiable functions defined over the set of real or complex numbers.
So they're predictable, basically. If I was to sum up what you're trying to say, you're basically saying the laws of physics are predictable, right?
Let me just finish to read the syllogism, and then we can discuss that. Is that okay?
Okay.
The properties of the physical universe depend on an obvious way on the laws of physics, but the basic laws themselves depend not one jota on what happens in the physical universe. There is thus a fundamental asymmetry. The states of the world are affected by the laws, but the laws are completely unaffected by the states. Einstein was a physicist, and he believed that math is invented, not discovered. His sharpest statement on this is his declaration that the series of integers is obviously an invention of the human mind, a self-created tool which simplifies the ordering of certain sensory experiences. All concepts, even those closest to experience, are from the point of view of logic freely chosen posits. And the laws of physics are immutable, absolute perfect mathematical relationships, infinitely precise in form, and the laws were imprinted on the universe at the moment of creation, at the Big Bang, and have since remained fixed in both space and time. The ultimate source of the laws transcend the universe itself to lie beyond the physical world. The only rational inference, therefore, is that the physical laws emanate from the mind of God.
Okay, so I heard a lot of the laws of physics comport to math, and math comports to the laws of physics, and therefore God. I'm still. It still seems like there's a bit of a gap in that leap that you're making there. That just because the laws of physics have some order to them and comport, and the second part of the issue I have there is, as you said, that they comport so perfectly with mathematical relationships, but math was a language designed to measure reality in physics. So I would hope that if the math on physics is wrong, we change the math. The laws of physics don't just happen to match the math. We match the math to the laws of physics. So math is a language that we made up, and just because the laws of physics go together so well with math doesn't mean that it came from the mind of God. It means that we've made a good language to describe reality.
Well, first of all, there is no reason at all why there should be laws of physics imposing the behavior of the physical universe upon them.
Other than the expansion of the universe. But that's neither here nor there. My point is the laws of physics exists, therefore God is what I'm getting from your argument.
Yes, correct.
Oh, okay. Do you not see the leap that you're making there between the laws of physics existing and they being the result of God?
Well, there would be absolutely no reason why our universe works orderly. And I can cite you here from William McCrea, an English astronomer, and he said actually it seems more natural to suppose that
our
the physical universe and the laws of physics are interdependent. So,
sorry, say that again. The universe and what are interdependent?
Actually, it seems more natural to suppose that the physical universe and that the laws of physics are interdependent, so that they depend on each other. I understand it in that way.
We made the laws of physics.
Well, the thing is that if there would be no laws of physics, then there would be no orderly universe and probably no universe at all.
But the laws of physics are just what we use to describe physical phenomena. All right.
Yes, we describe
the laws of physics don't depend on anything other than what we observe in reality, what we can observe and measure in reality.
Well, the laws of physics, they impose on physical matter how the universe has to behave. And that is something that requires an explanation. It doesn't have to be so. There is no physical necessity that these laws are there.
So if we come up here and I say the laws of physics exist, and my explanation is I don't know, but let's figure it out. How come you coming up to me and saying the laws of physics exist, therefore God is a better explanation than me just saying, well, I don't know, if there's a reason why the laws of physics exist, but we have a lot of smart people trying to figure some of this stuff out. Like why would you just assert that God is the answer when I don't know seems to fit there better?
Well, first of all, I don't know is not an explanation or an answer.
It's not an explanation. It's being honest about the evidence you have.
It seems more to be a placeholder to insert a material explanation when eventually such an explanation in the future comes up. So basically, a materialism of the gaps.
Does saying I don't know actually, basically you're saying that asserting God as an answer, whether or not that answer is correct, is better than admitting that we don't know something?
Well, the thing is that we know by experience that we as intelligent beings, we can invent math and apply it to set rules. And this is a process which is performed by intelligence. Then why should we not infer that there must have been a cosmic intelligence, a higher being, which also did set the rules and imposed them to the physical universe?
We don't have a basis in reality to use that as an explanation. We've never experienced. We don't have evidence, or we've never experienced any kind of a God or a supernatural being that has, come down and shown us that it's existed. So it makes your argument inherently circular to say that God exists because the laws of physics exist, and the laws of physics exist, therefore God. It becomes a completely circular argument at that point.
No, not at all. First of all, the evidence is that there are physical laws. Then we require to find an explanation.
Yes, there are physical laws, therefore God exists. And God exists, therefore there are physical laws. That's what you're saying. Because you just asked me, you said, well, how else would I explain the physical laws? And that's what I'm trying to say is I would say, I don't know how to explain the physical laws. But if you're sitting here saying, the laws of physics are here because of God, it's just a baseless assertion. It doesn't get us anywhere. It doesn't answer the question. It just fills in the gap with an imaginary answer.
Well, as I just explained to you, patient, that we know only of intelligent agents which are capable of inventing math and rules and impose them in order to have a functional outcome. We do not know.
But you're treating the laws of physics. You're treating the laws of physics like somebody had to come up and make them the way they are. The laws of physics just are. And even if somebody did come along and muck with them, we have no way of knowing that. We have no way of verifying that. We have no way of falsifying that. We have no way of knowing if the laws of physics came from anybody, or if they just are the way they are because that's just the way the universe is.
Well, as I said in my introduction, patient, my arguments and my epistemological framework is not based on empirical proofs. It is based on abductive reasoning to the best explanation. And I think that positing a creator as of the physical laws seems to me an adequate explanation.
But here's the thing, okay? When you're talking about deduction like that, Sherlock Holmes was deducing things in the realm of possibility. Sherlock Holmes never once in one of his stories, answered one of the mysteries with, it's magic. They always came out, they always had an explanation for it, and it always got explained, and it was never magic, because Sherlock Holmes works in reality with the rest of us. The problem with saying these exist, therefore God is that we don't have a basis in reality to use God as an explanation for something. So when you're trying to make this giant non sequitur between the laws of physics exist, therefore God, you just bypass a whole bunch of other problems, and it just doesn't get you anywhere.
Yeah, I would just repeat again what I said previously, patient. So I don't know if it makes any sense that we keep repeating the same arguments. Wouldn't it be better that we move to the second one?
Yeah, I suppose.
Yeah. Which other one would you like to talk about?
Well, let's go into fine tuning.
Okay.
So, my first problem with fine tuning is I guess. It just seems to me that you're committing a big gambler's fallacy. Do you understand the gambler's fallacy?
Maybe you can expose it just for the audience.
The gambler's fallacy, in a nutshell, is basically just because the odds aren't in your favor doesn't mean people don't win the lottery. And if you want to sit here and talk about a whole bunch of physicists that talk about how the universe could be different if these variables were different, well, the first problem that we have is we don't have any way of knowing if any of those variables could be different or what other values those variables could be. Some of those variables are just constants based on the law of the universe, or on the observed laws of physics. When we talk about all these physicists that are saying, well, the odds of this and the odds of that and the odds of that, and if it were any different, they always say life as we know it. That doesn't preclude, the existence of a universe or life, but it also has the problem of assuming that any of those values can even be different. And the next problem it states is saying, well, either option A is we won the lottery, or option B, God did it. And I pick option A because option A is within the realm of possibility and within the realm of observed reality. So basically, my issues with your fine tuning argument is that you're just committing a big colossal gambler's fallacy. You're just saying the numbers are not in our favor, therefore it must be magic. And I guess that's my problem with your.
Okay, just to address what your claim about physical necessity, that the universe could not be different. So Paul Davies answers to that. There is not a shred of evidence that the universe is logically necessary. Indeed, as a theoretical physicist, I find it rather easy to imagine alternative universes that are logically consistent and therefore equal contenders of reality. The appearance of design in physics and cosmology, in God and design, the theological argument of modern science.
But just because they can use what we know about math now and they can change the math in their hypotheticals and they can come up with different models doesn't mean any of those models can actually exist in our reality. It's just basically scientific spitballing.
Well, I mean, I see no necessity why the moon is surrounds our Earth, and you know that the moon is life essential. There is also no necessity that the Earth has exactly the size it has, which is also a requirement to have life. There is no necessity for many things which are just right in regards of the Earth, and all these things, they are not necessary. So we could perfectly have an Earth which is not life hosting.
So how many stars are in our known universe?
I don't know.
Okay, planets.
No idea.
Okay, so I've heard. Well, I know that it's a ridiculously large number of stars. It's a ridiculously large number of planets, and we've even found some that we believe can support life from a distance. So my question to you is you're playing one side of it. The odds of this happening this way on Earth, the odds of this happening this way on Earth, the odds of this happening this way on Earth, the odds of this happening this way on Earth. Haven't you ever considered the greater universe, the fact that there's trillions upon trillions upon trillions upon trillions of lottery tickets out there?
Yes, I have, and I can cite you here 2 papers, Exotic Life Sites, the Feasibility of Far-Out Habitants from Reasons.org. The data demonstrate that the probability of finding even one planet with the capacity to support life falls short in 1 chance in 10 to the 140 power. And another site.
Okay, so what you've just told me is that the odds are astronomically small.
Correct. Yes.
Okay, but it's still a lottery ticket.
I mean, we have 10 to the 80 power of atoms in the universe, and the chance to have a life-permitting universe, a planet, is still much smaller than the number of atoms in the universe. So I think this gives a pretty clear picture that it's reasonable to believe that probably there is no other life-permitting planet in the entire universe.
Well, I think I would disagree with you. I think you're underestimating the size and scope of the universe. But yeah, no, I definitely would have to disagree with you on that one. I think you're just committing a gambler's fallacy. You're just, and it's like I said, it's just scientific spitballing. It's like, well, if they were different, if this could be different, maybe if we change the variables here, we could get different results. And it's fun to do, and it's fun to simulate and model on a computer, but it doesn't actually tell us anything about how other universes could possibly be, or if they could be different. So to just say that, the odds are astronomically small. And another problem I have is is your argument that the Earth is fine-tuned for life, or that our whole universe is fine-tuned for life?
Both.
Okay, so if that is the case, how come there is no other life?
Because I believe that God made this Earth with a specific purpose to host life and not other places in the universe.
So, okay, if that's the case, then why would everywhere else in the universe literally kill us, though? Like, the universe is a huge radiation-filled vacuum, and most of the planets and rocks and stars and matter in it will just straight up kill us.
Yeah, because it wasn't made to host life.
So
it's the same as to say, well, there is a light bulb, and the light bulb has the function to enlighten the room. Now, if you touch the light bulb, you will burn yourself. So if you don't use it for the purpose it was created for, of course, you will have not a positive effect. And I think we can apply the same to the universe. God didn't create stars, planets to host life, but they have another purpose.
And what is that purpose? And how did you determine that?
Well, we know that the universe requires a certain size in order to have a planet which can host life. That would be one reason. And I don't know, maybe there are other reasons which we don't know of.
It's all a gambler's fallacy. It's all it's just all numbers, and as far as I can tell, that your entire argument there basically just boils down to the numbers. Don't fall in our favor, and we couldn't have possibly won the lottery. Therefore, we're going to go with magic, and I guess I just have a problem with that. Tell me what, since we're talking about numbers, let's talk abiogenesis if you don't mind moving on.
Mm-hmm. Sure.
Okay, so you said that the odds of a cell coming about and having all of its working parts just poof into existence or whatever is impossible. Are you aware that?
No, that's not what I said. My proposition is that an intelligent designer is required to make the life all at once, that it has to be an injection of a huge amount of information, and that intelligence is required to make life.
But abiogenesis doesn't start with that much.
Yeah,
abiogenesis starts with a single self-replicating molecule.
Well, that is the proposal of science, that life started with chemical evolution and with abiogenesis.
And they've replicated the creation of self-replicating molecules from a clay in a low oxygen atmosphere in ocean clay in a laboratory. They've made it. They have found that under these conditions with this clay, that proteins, self-replicating proteins, come about naturally from this clay.
I think you are conflating RNA hypothesis with amino acids. That's what they try to do on clay.
No, I'm talking about a specific experiment that a paper I read about, a very specific experiment, and I would have to dig that up because I haven't read it in a long time. But my point is that you're overcomplicating the origins of life. You're saying it has to be a whole cell. And abiogenesis doesn't start with a whole cell. It just starts with a molecule that can duplicate itself. And
there is no known experiment where RNA successfully and by itself did self-replicate.
I'll have to look that up. I guess the people in the audience will have to look that up. I didn't come prepared with that one. But my whole point is that you're trying to start with the car, and abiogenesis just starts with the first piece on the assembly line. You don't have you don't have this great leap from inert chemicals to all of a sudden you've got a fully replicating cell that's duplicating itself. You just start with a molecule. That molecule gets a little bit more complicated as it replicates, as it self-replicates, and eventually what works is what we have today. So
and is there evidence for this?
Well, there's a lot of smart people who are working on the problem. My issue is that you've said, well, it's too complicated, therefore God.
Yeah.
So
I'm saying two things. I'm saying that because science has failed in 70 years, even to synthesize the basic building blocks of life in the laboratory, that's the one thing, the negative evidence, inductive, eliminative induction. And what we see is that cells are factories full of machines and turbines, energy production turbines, and complex assembly lines and so forth.
You're saying irreducible complexity, right?
And they are all made based on instructional assembly information, which directs these processes, both to make the molecular machines, the proteins.
Which started
to
a lot
assemble the
simpler
cell.
than where you're describing it at. You're starting things at like 850 million years of evolution.
Well, there was no evolution up until life started and then self-replicated. So you don't have even evolution as an explanatory mechanisms to explain the origin of life.
Well, no, I'm not trying to explain it.
I'm
not trying to explain it. What I am saying is what abiogenesis is, and what you are explaining is like several hundred million years after abiogenesis. You're talking about a cell that exists with machinery in it.
Well, you require about 1,300 proteins.
You only require a self-replicating molecule. You only require one molecule. It doesn't have to be very big, and all it has to do is be able to replicate itself. And as it replicates itself, it keeps replicating itself, and then it doesn't do so perfectly all the time. And some of those molecules get longer, and some of those molecules fail. And that's the essence of evolution. You start with a self-replicating molecule. It is the hypothesis of abiogenesis is how it's described. You start with a self-replicating molecule. That self-replicating molecule evolves from there. You're trying to say that abiogenesis is a cell with all this machinery in it, and you're skipping several hundred million years of just molecules floating around and replicating themselves before you even get to a cell.
Okay,
so
I'll not be gracious with you right now, and I will call you out. What you are proposing is a nice example of pseudoscientific just so storytelling.
I'm explaining the hypothesis of abiogenesis.
There is no basis for that. In 70 years of experimentations, they have not come up even with an explanation how the basic building blocks of life could have emerged prebiotically. Show me a paper which has a compelling explanation. There isn't one. And I am reading Abiogenesis. Well, this is not
talking about a lot of scientists who are trying to solve the problem by doing science, and they're trying to come up with what they believe is the best explanation for this stuff. And you're sitting here and you're saying, it's all complicated. They haven't figured it out in 70 years. Therefore, God.
Yeah.
And so you're telling me to show you these scientists in their paper, but you're trying to use magic as an explanation to just hand wave it all away. So
what I am saying is that intelligence is required to inject a huge amount of information to make the molecules, the proteins which are required, the basic building blocks of life, the energy. You require information for that. And
okay, how are you using the word information? Because there's a lot of different ways you can use information. Are you talking about are you using information in the there's information stored in the DNA, or are you using information as in the DNA is a code that somebody came along and programmed?
Okay, first of all, DNA is a semantophoretic molecule which stores information through the genetic code. Okay. DNA is the hardware, and the sequence of nucleotides, that is the information which is required to direct the synthesis of proteins and to instruct the operation of the cell and to make all the parts which are required in order for the cell to self-replicate and everything else.
Okay, what I'm asking for is where's the intelligence in the self-replicate, or where's the intelligence in the information?
Okay, I am a machine designer. I will give you here an analogy. Okay.
Okay.
I am a machine designer, and when my boss comes and tells me, I need that you make a machine or a turbine or a computer or a transistor or whatever, a device for a specific purpose, what do I have to do? I need to sit down. I have to think how to solve the problem, how to make a plan, a blueprint in order to give all the dimensions, the materials, whatever is required. I have to put it on the paper. And then that paper goes to the factory, and there the factory workers, they can read the paper, the blueprint.
I understand it's a complicated process.
And based on the information, they will make the devices which are required, which are the machines, all that kind of stuff. That is an analogy precisely to what we see happens in the cell, where the information in the genome instructs the assembly and the making of all these parts which are required to have a functional cell.
So you've described chemistry. I want to know where the intelligence part of it comes from. I want to know how you determine that what is in there isn't a result of millions of years of evolution that managed to survive, as opposed to God sitting there tinkering and TTAGGing his way through the human genome. Because there's a lot of if God really did write our DNA, he screwed a lot of it up.
Okay, I would say that an information system is also irreducibly complex. Why? First of all, you need the hardware, which in our case is the DNA. You need the language, which is the genetic code, which are the words. Then you need the information transmission system, that is from DNA to RNA polymerase, which makes the transcription into messenger RNA, which then go to the ribosome, which makes the translation, where the genetic code is translated into the amino acid alphabet.
Do you know what
you have here 4 ingredients, where if one of these ingredients is lacking or missing, you do not have that information bearing system. So that has to emerge all at once, or you have no information and no life.
Derailed my thought. My question was, it'll come back to me, damn it. That's why, sorry, sometimes when I try to talk over you, it's so I can get a thought out before it leaves my head.
Take your time, no problem.
Your information,
you were asking me where God plays a game in that situation.
Yes. So what I want to know is, basically, you've basically described something that is very complicated, right? The cell is a very complicated piece of machinery, if we're going to call it a piece of machinery, right?
Yes.
So one of the major hallmarks of design is simplicity. Why did God get so complicated with it?
Because if it would not be so complicated, it would not work. I mean,
But
you
it
can
doesn't
use,
work very well now.
you can use Occam's razor, but if you have a system which doesn't work and is not able to perform the thing which it is intended to do, then it makes no sense or is meaningless to have something which is simple. So you need the complexity which is simply required to have a specific target or goal.
Damn. I'm having a moment. I'm sorry, y'all. The ADHD is really, really hard on me tonight. So when you're talking about DNA being a code, what did you compare it to?
I'm not saying that DNA is a code. What I'm saying is that
what,
DNA is the information storing device. It's like a hard disk.
But you said God made it. You said God made it to do a specific thing that's treating it like a code, right?
Well, no. Let's be clear here.
I guess my question.
Otherwise, we are confusing things here. DNA is the information-bearing semantophoretic molecule, which is, as an analogy, the hard disk. Okay, and then the codons, these are the words which compose the genetic code. And the genetic code is kind of a cipher where you have the translation of 64 codons to 20 amino acids, and that translation occurs in the ribosome.
What did you compare? Because you keep using this analogy of a factory, and you're using it to compare against something natural, something that's basically chemistry. Because we understand all of the laws of chemistry that are involved that cause the chemical reactions that happen in DNA and in cells. So how?
What a moment, let me stop you here. What kind of physical reaction or necessity are you talking about?
That's irrelevant for my question.
Okay.
I mean, we know the laws of chemistry, we know the laws of physics, and based on we know how chemicals react in the presence of other chemicals. We know a lot of this stuff. Like you said, we have been studying it for 70 years. So when you want to say that it's something that was designed by intelligence, and then you go ahead and you proceed to compare it to a factory with all of this other stuff, I have a hard time deriving the intelligence from that, because as I said, we have a whole, we have a whole lot of information about evolution and how it works and how we got what we have today. It's because basically it's what worked and what worked consistently and reliably, but we've had to go for a couple billion years to get here. It wasn't an easy journey. So I guess when you want to compare it to technology, I want to know what you compared.
Okay,
what you compared.
I'll explain that to you. The factory portals with fully automated security checkpoints and control.
Okay, so we have a factory. What do we compare that factory to when we're determining whether or not it's natural or man-made, though?
Yeah, I'm trying just to answer your question. So if you give me 2 minutes.
But you're explaining more about the factory. I want to know what you compared the factory to.
Well, first of all, what is a factory? A factory comes from Latin, and it means fabricare, or making. And the cell is a chemical factory which makes all the materials, the building blocks of life, which it requires. It makes the molecular machines. It makes organelles.
That's just conflating terms, because it might chemically act as a factory, but to call it a factory just because a factory is something man-made, I think, is disingenuous. Because you're just basically asserting that because it can act like a factory, therefore it had to be a man-made something. Or it had to be intelligently made. I have a problem with that.
Mm-hmm. Okay, first of all, the idea that the cell is a factory, that is not something which originated by me. These are terms which I have simply learned from scientific papers. And I can link, if you want, a considerable number of papers which describe the cell as a factory in a literal sense. If you want, I can read you some.
Okay, just because it can behave like a man-made factory, how does that mean that intelligence had to have created it?
There is a relationship between instructions and making things for specific purposes based on these instructions. And that relationship is always tracked back to intelligent setup.
So how did you determine the purpose of the cell?
Well, the cell self-replicates, it adapts to the environment, it perpetuates life, it consumes energy, it imports food, it generates a waste. That is basically the function of the cell. Now, so what is your question again?
Well, the function of it, it doesn't explain the purpose of it. But my point is you're comparing
Well,
something
science doesn't
natural, and you keep using
let me
these
interrupt.
analogies.
Yeah.
You keep using these analogies to man-made things that we have a basis for in reality, and you're saying, well, it behaves like something man has made and designed, therefore it must have been made and designed. It's just it's just a non sequitur. It just
Okay, let me answer to that.
once again jumps to an explanation without any merit.
Okay, let me answer to that. I will quote you from Herschel. He says, if the analogy of two phenomena be very close and striking, while at the same time the cause of one is very obvious, it becomes scarcely possible to refuse to admit the action of an analogous cause in the other, tough, not so obvious in itself. And a metaphor, a biological cell is like a production system, demonstrates that similar behaviors are driven by similar causal mechanisms. And Michael Denton, he writes, the inference to design is a purely a posteriori induction based on the ruthlessly consistent application of the logic of analogy. So we have a good justification to say if we see in our human life things which are generated by intelligence, and we have no example where non-intelligent mechanisms can bring forward the same thing in question, then we have, and we see the same kind of things in nature, we have a good justification by using an analogous reasoning that this device, even if the cause is not obvious, was made by similar mechanisms.
So what makes magic the obvious explanation then?
The fact that blueprints which direct the making of machines, factories, computers, transistors, production lines, turbines, energy production factories, all these kind of things, we know that they emanate from intelligence, which makes them for specific purposes. And all these things, we see them equivalently in the cell in a far more sophisticated way implemented.
Okay. I still don't think there's a basis in reality to point to magic as an explanation for anything, but it always throws me for a loop when I ask people. Anyway, I think
your alternative patient is
something natural.
Since you do not have evolution until life starts to self-replicate, and there is no physical necessity for life to start, the only alternative are unguided random natural events acting on the prebiotic earth. But the problem, I have outlined it in my introduction, is that if you leave molecules simply randomly lay around on the ground, they are impure, you have no mechanism to select them. There are over 500 different amino acids occurring naturally. You have to select the 20 which are used in life. There was no selection mechanism.
Once again, you're jumping 200 million years into the future, because we're talking about getting a self-replicating molecule, not a whole cell. You keep going back to it had to have this and it had to have that and it had to have this, and as far as I understand it, the only thing that really early life needed was phosphorus. But
what do you do with phosphorus to get life, patient?
Well, it was phosphorus. It's been a while. I have to go back into.
Well, I can answer your question. You need over 40 different materials and rare earth minerals in order to have life. You need you need iron, you need sulfur, you need nitrogen, which was not readily available. You need carbon, which was not readily available. You have to make all this stuff, and the machinery to make it was not there. There was no ammonia readily available on prebiotic earth. That is also made through the cell. So this is a huge problem, and metabolic first scenarios, they simply are not working, because to make carbon, it is a complex process. You need several
But to
and
have
lined up.
all of this come about through natural processes makes a lot more sense to me than to have it all come about with magic.
Well, I mean, you can stick to that explanation, patient, but you have no rational ground to stick to that because it is not evidence-based.
Well, it is evidence-based because at the end of the day, what I can say to you is I can say, I don't know. And I don't know is a better answer than God did it, because God is just a placeholder that stops you from looking for better answers. And it's just a placeholder for the word magic.
Basically,
you might as well just say the great wizard Gandalf came by and created, and created, caused life to evolve on our planet.
Okay, so
And another problem is it's indistinguishable.
View,
it's also indistinguishable from nature.
Okay, so basically, patient, what I am getting from your answers is that God doesn't have any chance, whatever, it doesn't matter, whatever evidence that we can see in nature, God is magic, and therefore magic can't.
Well, you've got to have a way to demonstrate the difference between the natural and the supernatural elements of it. We have life, and we have natural processes and natural explanations. We don't have any supernatural processes or explanations other than you saying it just couldn't have happened because they weren't all there together. But that's not. Even so, my problem is that if I were to say I don't know what the origin of life is, but I would bet you that it would be a natural process, that is a much better answer than just asserting that it came about by magic or a god, which we don't have any basis in reality for to use as an explanation.
Well,
we haven't even really defined it for the discussion. What I mean?
Patience, that boils down to an argument from incredulity. It can't be magic, then therefore it wasn't magic.
Well, what I'm saying is I don't know is better than to assert something from my imagination.
That's not what I am doing. I am giving you rational grounds why I infer an intelligent designer as the
for a God that you can't demonstrate.
I don't have to demonstrate you, God. You cannot demonstrate me either that natural causes can create life.
Yes, but when we're talking about what is or isn't possible, we have a historical basis for a lot of things, and we can derive that some things probably just aren't possible. And we can take those and we can put those explanations off to the side in the imagination of where they go. And they belong in your imagination because I have never gotten any information about a God that didn't come from somebody else. So no God has ever come to me and told me that, he exists. So the only say so I have that any gods exist at all come from their fan clubs. So I can't. So based on the fact that the only information I have about God comes from other people, I have to assume that God is a fiction. And you can't use fictions as an explanation, and they don't make a good explanation. And just to say, hey, I have an explanation doesn't really mean anything if the explanation is the wrong one. So I guess I see we're trying to go into questions here, but I guess that's a good way to end it. I feel like.
I think so.
If you guys wanted to do as we typically do here, ending the discussion portion, if you guys wanted to take a minute each, if you feel necessary to wrap up your thoughts, wrap up your points. We got some good questions and super chats here. Is there anything you guys wanted to say in terms of, it looked like Patient Beers, you kind of gave your final thoughts there.
I kind of did. I think I made all my points as best as I could this evening. They didn't all stick as well as I had hoped, but I'll keep practicing.
Hey, listen, it was a good discussion, engaging. It's flown by because that was an hour discussion. I looked at the clock and I was like, okay, it's almost been an hour and a half here. So we've had a fun chat. It's been a great debate. Otangelo, did you have some final points you wanted to make before we go right into the Q&A?
Yes, it was good. I was able to make my points without being interrupted, patient. So you were a very nice debater, and I appreciate and I thank you for that. But I think it boils down basically to an argument from incredulity. I cannot imagine that magic has done it, so therefore we prefer to just stay agnostic in regards of these questions.
Awesome. Okay, yeah, let's get right into it. Let's see. And Patient Beard, thanks for being a good sport. Looks like in a friendly way, some of the opposing side in the chats coming at you a bit with some of these super chats. So, of course, feel free to comment as
They're
necessary.
allowed. Anything that doesn't kill me will hopefully make me stronger and not leave me maimed.
Exactly. Whatever doesn't kill you makes you stronger. And Otangelo and I both know when we're on modern day debate, I mean, it's typically an hour debate with the live chat. Isn't that right, Otangelo? So
Yeah.
we've been there. We've been there. You got to be a good sport, apparently. So, you know what? I saved all the questions that have flown by here. So I'm going to go back to the first question of the night, which came in all the way back at 8:12. Andrew Cumming. Question for Otangelo. Does ID make predictions about phylogenetics or no? If so, what are those predictions?
Well, I think that God created each of its kind a few thousand years back. I don't think that I don't know how there could be made predictions in regards of that. So I've never thought actually about this question. So, yeah.
No problem. So what we typically do in the Q&As, if the other debater wants a response, that's fine. We allow it. We just always allow whoever the question was for, we make sure they get the last word. So feel free if you guys ever have anything to say.
I would just say to Otangelo, I think what they're talking about is one thing you might want to look up is like and I know I'm going to screw it up, Archaeopteryx. Basically, I hope I'm not screwing my examples up. The reason why that was such a big find was because the phylogenetic tree predicted that there was a species there that they were missing, and then they found fossils of it after the phylogenetic tree predicted it. So I think that's an example of what the question was talking about. So I mean, if you're talking about what you know.
Yeah, maybe I can elaborate on that. I think that the phylogenetic tree has been falsified by the Cambrian explosion, where we see 70 phyla which emerge abruptly in the geological record. And that was not predicted by Darwin's theory. So I think this is a powerful evidence against theory of evolution and positive evidence for intelligent design, that God created each of its kind separately as a specific species, and those then speciated, but in a limited manner, and they remained separated in the gene pool. So, yeah.
Awesome. Okay, thank you for the answer, and good back and forth, gentlemen. Okay, so next question here comes from Gavin Hurleyman. Question for both. So we've got a good amount of questions for the both of you guys. So question is, why is evolution called a science when it cannot be observed, demonstrated, tested, or repeated as per the scientific model? So whoever would like to answer first, go ahead.
I'll just be basic with it. Evolution has been observed. It's been observed a lot. And one really common example that I'd like to give that I think kind of helps people to understand it a little better is when you look at the modern dog today, you have a whole variety of different species of dog, and they can all still interbreed. But if you were to take any two breeds and separate them after a long enough time, those populations would speciate. They would not be able to interbreed. And so if you're talking about going back up in time, you would have all of the ancestor to the common canine is, most of the canine breeds of dog we have now is, the wolf. And then you go up another level to A. carnivora, and that would be the ancestor to, modern cats and bears and dingoes and all of that. Anyway, so there's way more. There is a whole lot of evidence for, evolution, and I think that if you don't think there is, I think you have to stick your head in the sand and live under a rock for a while to not let any of it, to completely ignore all of it.
Otangelo, did you have some comments on the question?
I basically agree with Patient. Evolution has to be defined first. There is a speciation of secondary speciation where we see populations separating and that they cannot interbreed anymore. But this is not what is in dispute. What we are disputing is that a common ancestor can have been the source of all life forms on Earth. And this is not substantiated. There is no evidence for this. And also common ancestry, bacteria and eukaryotes, that the transition is not substantiated. The endosymbiotic theory is also, there are many problems with that. I don't want to go too much into that, but that is not substantiated. So I would say that up to a limited degree, evolution, that is evidence, there is proof of that's not in dispute. Also adaptation to the environment is even life necessary. There had to be mechanisms right in the first life form when life started to be able to adapt to the environment, and that's kind of evolution that had to be there. And I think that is pre-programmed design.
Do you think that all dogs have a modern ancestor, and that modern ancestor is the wolf?
Yes, sure.
Okay. Do you think that wolves, cats, bears, dingoes, if you go back, do you believe they all had a common ancestor?
Well, I've not studied that, so I'm not able to answer where that branching has occurred. I think that there is much dispute.
So for dogs to a wolf, it's possible, but there's a point where it stops.
Yeah, I think there is a limit where you cannot have a transition. Like, for example, from unicellular to multicellular life, you need so many innovations at the same time. You need cell-cell communication, you need cell adherence molecules where the cells stick together. If you don't have both, you cannot have multicellularity. If you want to grow a new member, a new limb, you need so many different factors, and also differentiation of the cells. There is so many things which are in play. I've studied that. So there the big questions arise.
I'll just.
Okay, if you guys are cool with it, we can go on to the next question. I've got one here I can put on screen. Can we test the laws of logic with the scientific method? If not, then why would God?
Can we test the laws? Can we test the laws of logic? That's an interesting question. As far as I understand, the laws of logic are axioms. They're starting points that we use because of their ability to produce reliable, effective results that comport to reality. So I wouldn't say that they're necessarily scientifically provable, but we use them because of their history of producing reliable results.
Okay, I appreciate the response. And Otangelo, unless you had a response as
Well,
well. We can move
I
on to the
think
next question. Up to you.
that goes into dualism, the question of the mind, and I mean, can matter produce logic? I think no. These are different realms of reality. So
Logic
anyone,
is a language. We made logic up.
yes, and it goes into the question: where do languages come from? Does matter produce languages? That is, I think, where materialism completely fails short to have
Came
an
from the
explanation. And
smarter
we
members.
do have an explanation where God is the prime mind, which holds all these axioms of logic, of language, of conscience, of sensations, of experience, and so forth, and made creatures like us, which are made upon His image. So we have actually answers to these questions, while materialists, they must believe that matter produced all these things, which makes absolutely no sense.
Okay. I am going to Praise is accusing me in the chat of dodging. He said he asked if the laws of logic were testable, and that's a yes or no question. Let's see. So the first law of logic is that A equals A, and not A equals, or not A equals not A. So a thing is itself, the law of identity. I'm just going to go with no. I don't know how I would test the laws of logic, to be honest with you, and I'm not going to waste 20 minutes here trying to figure it out.
No problem.
Just like I said, they produce reliable results. That's why people use them. I don't necessarily would say that they're testable. We still use them because they're effective.
Awesome. Well, I appreciate you guys keeping this debate engaging, cordial, and respectful. So let's move on to the next question. We've got Smitty 121981 here with a question for Otangelo. Question is, what does Otangelo think about technological evolution demonstrating microevolution, macroevolution, selection, mutation, punctuated equilibrium, etc.?
I don't understand the question.
Well, it looks like he's making a technological evolution. What does he think about technological evolution demonstrating? Yeah, he might. If you're out there, Smitty, you might want to clarify what you mean exactly. I'm not sure if Patient Beard has anything to add to it, but if you understand the question, technological evolution, he's saying, has demonstrated macroevolution.
Well, give me the paper and I look into it.
Yeah. If he has a clarifying, if he can clarify what exactly he means. He says technological evolution demonstrates design. Well, we're going to move on to the next question because I don't think he's very clear in that question. Okay. Logical, plausible, probable. $5 super chat. Thank you so much. He says, Patient Beard, are you suggesting that the multiverse is a perpetual motion machine?
I never really thought about it like that.
It's a good question.
The problem with perpetual motion machines is the whole idea behind a perpetual motion machine is that you can get more energy out of a system than you put into it. And the thing with our universe is it's always expanding. So even though a collapse in the Higgs boson might cause energy from dark energy, let me just back up a second. Dark matter is entering our universe. That is a form of energy being created. And when it collapses, it would be collapsing into regular matter outward at the speed of light. And it would, I guess, as it expands, the only two known violations to the laws of conservation of energy I know of is dark matter entering our universe and photons getting stretched into oblivion out of existence over long distances. But I think that's enough.
Okay, thanks for that response, Otangelo. If you had anything to say, you can
No,
do so, or we can move to the next question.
no, I think what you just said, patient, that energy can be generated. That's opposed to the second law of thermodynamics.
No, the first law, the law of conservation of energy. It's
Yes, but you
the,
have to consider both of them,
the,
and
the
the
two
energy always winds down. It never goes into the opposite direction, which is what you claimed.
there are two known violations to the laws to the law of conservation of energy, and the first one is that dark matter is entering our universe as it expands. And I don't fully understand that one. I just know that that's how it's described. And the other violation of the laws of conservation of energy is that photons that go over a very, very, very long distance will eventually get stretched out until they become indistinguishable from the background dark matter around them. So it just has some interesting implications, I think. With regards to some of these other hypotheses in cosmology, when we're learning these things about physics. But yeah, there are two known violations to the conservation of energy, and you can go Google that one. It's fairly recent.
All right. Well, let me move on to the next one. Another super chat from Logical, Plausible, Probable. Thank you so much. $5 super chat. He's coming at you, Patient Beard. LPP versus Patient Beard. So he says, Beard Boy. He's got a nickname for you. You do realize 10 to the power of 80 total is the secular peer-reviewed position. Right. I just read that word for word. You can respond however you'd like to, Patient Beard.
10 to the power of 80 is the secular peer-reviewed. I don't understand why he's given me that number, though. To 10 to the power of 80, the odds that our universe could be different?
Let me see.
He said, he'll have to clarify.
It can be tough sometimes because these questions fly in during portions of the discussion, and then all of a sudden an hour goes by and we kind of lose the context. So that's fine. If John wanted to clarify or anybody else wanted to clarify any of their questions, please let me know. So, okay, next question here is from, let me see. A super chat from Doki Doki, not a question. Thank you, Doki Doki. Says, subscribe party at 3,000 subs. Yes. Anybody likes debates and discussions, please subscribe to this channel. Share around. We're almost at 3K subs. When we do, we're going to have a huge open mic 3K subscriber party. Everybody's invited. So thank you for that super chat. Question. Okay, here's a question. JC and the Motto Heads. Question for, let me see, PB. So that would be you, Patient Beard. If I say I will give you a chocolate bar after infinite time has passed, will you ever get the chocolate bar? If no, then how can we get to now?
Well, you're not asking. We're not trying to have an infinite amount of time before we get to the end of the chocolate bar. We're trying to cut a slice out of the middle. That's my answer.
Awesome. Thank you. So let me move on to the next question then. Question is from Redefine Living. Thank you so much, Redefine Living. Question is for probably Patient Beard. Question, is it easier for nature to build a cheesecake or a lesser complex cell?
Is it easier for nature to build a cheesecake than a lesser complex cell? I'm going to have to go with the cheesecake on that one. I'm sure nature loves cheesecakes.
I know I do. Otangelo, if you had a response.
Oh, no.
Okay, well, let me see. I see a bunch of super stickers, super chats. Thank you so much, guys. I appreciate it. And I think we just about managed to get through all the questions close to the 2-hour mark. So I think we got through them all. Thank you so much. And another super sticker came in. We got Doki Doki Bible Club. If I missed any questions, let me know in the chat real quick. And yeah, really good discussion, engaging debate. Audience had a great time. I want
If you have any last minute questions, right?
Yeah, I don't see any last minute ones coming in, but we may. So if any last minute ones, let me know. I'll give you guys the floor for just some final words before we close it down for the night. We're almost at the 2-hour mark, so I think this flew by.
Well, thank you for the debate. I had a good time with everybody tonight, even if I had a couple of ADHD moments in there. I do apologize. I'm trying to get better at those.
Hey, no problem. Listen, we're all guilty of those moments, and it was a respectful, cordial debate. Very easy debate for me to moderate. To be honest with you, I was able to just sit back and relax the whole time. You guys moderated yourselves very well.
You did pretty good for somebody who drove down to the bar for an hour.
Yeah, exactly. Who told you? No, I'm just kidding. And Otangelo, final words before we shut it down.
Yeah, thank you very much, SFT, to have me again at your channel. It was fun. Thank you, Patient, as well. Thank you to the audience, and hope to see you at another opportunity.
Awesome.
I agree.
Awesome.
Thank you all.
Awesome. No problem. Speed of Sound says, should he have an after show? Yeah, if anyone wants an after show, go ahead and you can advertise it here real quick in the live chat right before I shut it down. And if anybody wants to check, whoever is doing an after show, you want to check it out, go ahead. Okay, guys, we will see you Wednesday for Matt Slick versus Dr. Ron Garrett on morality. So be here for 8:30 EST. Okay, everybody, SFT is out.